The cantina buzzed with the lively chatter of interstellar travelers, their voices interwoven with the occasional clink of glasses and the faint hum of distant engines. The air was thick with the scent of alien spices, engine oil, and something unmistakably akin to tequila. It was the kind of place where deals were struck, alliances forged, and the unexpected seemed to wait around every corner. In one corner, a group of aliens from the Zarkonian Empire exchanged wary glances as they eyed a small group of humans seated at the bar. At the center of the human group sat Sergeant Rachel Razor Carter, her dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail, her posture relaxed but alert. Her marine uniform, adorned with unofficial patches from her past escapades, shimmered faintly under the dim light, echoing the grit and glory of countless battles. Beside her, Private Marcus Mac McAllister, a burly man with a perpetual smirk, raised his glass in a mock toast to the aliens watching them. "They're still staring, Razor," Mac said, leaning closer to Rachel. His voice carried just enough volume to ensure the Zarkonians could hear him. "Think they're jealous we can hold our liquor better?" Rachel chuckled, her eyes scanning the room. The Zarkonians were known across the galaxy for their pride and their almost comical inability to back down from a challenge. Their reptilian features, scaled skin, elongated snouts, and sharp, gleaming teeth twitched with barely concealed disdain. One of them, clearly the leader, stood and strode toward the humans. His scales shimmered with a metallic sheen, and his golden eyes narrowed as he spoke in heavily accented universal standard. "Humans," he hissed, his voice carrying a faint echo. "I am Commander Zetal of the Zarkonian Empire. I have heard tales of your kind's peculiar resilience. Perhaps you would care to prove it." Rachel's smile widened. "Prove it? That depends. Are you offering to buy the first round?" The other humans laughed, and even some of the nearby patrons turned their attention to the exchange. Zetal's nostrils flared, and his tail flicked in irritation. "We Zarkonians pride ourselves on our endurance," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Yet I hear humans claim to be unmatched in, what do you call it?" He paused, searching for the word. "Drinking." "Oh, it's not just drinking," Mac chimed in, his grin widening. "It's drinking responsibly. Or sometimes irresponsibly. Either way, we're the best at it." The cantina erupted in laughter, and Zetal's scales seemed to bristle. "Then let us settle this," he growled. "A contest. Human endurance versus Zarkonian resilience. Let the galaxy see which species is superior." Rachel leaned back in her seat, feigning disinterest. "I don't know," she said, tapping her chin thoughtfully. "We've got a long journey ahead. Don't want to embarrass you too badly before we leave." "Embarrass us?" Zetal's voice rose, and his claws tapped against the table in agitation. "You will regret those words, human. What are your terms?" Rachel exchanged a glance with Mac, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. She turned back to Zetal, her smile as sharp as a blade. "Simple. We each pick our strongest contenders. First one to pass out loses." The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into cheers and shouts of encouragement. Bets began to form, credits and rare alien artifacts exchanging hands as patrons prepared for what promised to be the most entertaining spectacle of the evening. As the tables were cleared and the contest area prepared, Rachel took a moment to observe the Zarkonians. They moved with the practiced precision of soldiers, their movements calculated and deliberate. Zetal himself seemed almost smug, his confidence radiating like a heatwave. "You sure about this?" Mac asked, nudging her shoulder. "I mean, I've seen you drink, but these guys look like they've got livers made of titanium." Rachel smirked. "Don't worry. I've got a plan." Mac raised an eyebrow. "A plan? Care to share with the class?" "It's called improvisation," she replied. "Now go find us something strong enough to knock out a Zarkonian. And make sure it's got a kick." The cantina's bartender, a multi-limbed alien with a perpetual look of boredom, set up the drinks with practiced efficiency. The first round consisted of something called galactic flame, a bright blue liquid that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. It was said to burn like plasma going down, a test of fortitude for any species. Rachel and Zetal took their seats at the center table, surrounded by a growing crowd. The room buzzed with anticipation as the bartender poured the first round. Ladies first, Zetal sneered, pushing a glass toward Rachel. She raised the glass in a mock toast. To cultural exchange, she said, downing the liquid in one swift motion. Her expression barely flickered as the fiery drink coursed through her. Zetal followed suit, his golden eyes narrowing as he set the empty glass down. Impressive, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. The rounds continued, with each drink showcasing vivid hues that seemed to glow, emitting fumes that crackled faintly and effects that drew gasps from the audience. As the contest wore on, Rachel's strategy began to take shape. She paced herself, feigning moments of weakness to lull the Zarkonians into a false sense of security. Meanwhile, Mac discreetly swapped out some of her stronger drinks with a less potent substitute, a sleight of hand perfected during countless nights at the barracks. By the 10th round, the effects were beginning to show. Zetal's movements grew sluggish, his once pristine posture starting to sag. His companions whispered among themselves, their confidence waning as their leader's resilience faltered. Rachel, on the other hand, maintained an air of controlled chaos. Her laughter grew louder, her gestures more animated, but her eyes remained sharp, calculating every move. The climax of the contest arrived with a drink known only as the Black Hole. Its opaque, swirling contents seemed to absorb light, and the bartender's smirk suggested it was more of a dare than a beverage. "This is your last chance to back out," Rachel said, her voice carrying a hint of mock concern. Zetal's claws gripped the table as he steadied himself. "Never," he growled, though his words slurred slightly. They raised their glasses, the room holding its collective breath. The liquid burned like molten lava, its taste indescribable. Rachel's vision blurred for a moment, but she forced herself to stay upright, her sheer willpower keeping her steady. Zetal, however, was not so lucky. With a final, unsteady sway, he collapsed onto the table, his tail thumping against the floor. The room erupted into cheers, the humans' victorious shouts drowning out the groans of the defeated Zarkonians. Rachel stood, her knees trembling but her hand steady as she raised her empty glass, her defiant grin cutting through her exhaustion. "To humanity," she declared, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We may not always win, but when we do, we make it unforgettable." The cantina erupted into applause, the humans basking in their victory while the Zarkonians slunk away in defeat. For Rachel and her crew, it was just another night in the galaxy, but for the patrons of the cantina, it was a story they'd tell for years to come. The cantina pulsed with the energy of jubilant humans, their laughter mixing with the sharp tang of spiced alien drinks and the rhythmic hum of machinery in the background. Rachel and her crew basked in the adoration of the crowd, the clinking of glasses and laughter filling the air. But amidst the revelry, the Zarkonians regrouped, their pride too deeply wounded to let the contest go unanswered. Commander Zetal, despite his defeat, still held his head high. His scaled brow furrowed as he conferred with his subordinates in hushed tones. The humiliation of losing to humans in front of a packed cantina was a stain on their honor, one they were determined to erase. Zetal's golden eyes gleamed with a mixture of pride and simmering frustration, his steps deliberate as he battled between indignation and the need to reclaim his honor. "Humans," Zetal began, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of challenge. "You have proven yourselves capable in a drinking contest. But endurance alone is not the true test of superiority. Let us see how you fare when the stakes are elevated." Rachel arched an eyebrow, leaning casually against the bar. "Elevated, huh? What did you have in mind, Commander? Drinking while doing backflips?" Zetal's tail flicked sharply, his expression unamused. "No. We propose a duel of toxins. A true challenge to measure your resilience. We Zarkonians have access to some of the most potent brews in the galaxy. Let us see if you humans can withstand their effects." The room fell silent as the weight of Zetal's words settled over the patrons. Mac let out a low whistle, muttering, "This guy really wants to see someone keel over, huh?" Rachel's grin widened. "A duel of toxins? Sounds like a party. But I'll need to know what's on the line before I risk my liver for your entertainment. If we win, you will broadcast a formal declaration of Zarkonian superiority to the entire sector," Zetal said, his claws tapping rhythmically against the table. "If you win, we will relinquish to you the coordinates of one of our most secure supply depots." The crowd erupted into murmurs. The stakes were no longer just a matter of pride but of strategic significance. Rachel glanced at her crew, gauging their reactions. Mac gave her a subtle nod, while the others whispered their support. The opportunity was too good to pass up. "Deal," Rachel said, extending her hand. Zetal hesitated for a moment before gripping her forearm in a firm shake, sealing the agreement. The preparations for the duel transformed the cantina into a spectacle, with tables arranged like an arena and the alien brews emitting swirling mists that shimmered under the dim light. The cantina's bartender, now fully invested in the spectacle, cleared out a section of the room and set up a series of tables, each one adorned with an array of alien concoctions. Bottles of every shape and color lined the surfaces, some emitting faint glows or producing small wisps of vapor. The sheer variety of toxins was intimidating, and the crowd's excitement only grew as the preparations continued. Rachel and Zetal took their places at opposite ends of the central table, each flanked by their respective crews. The rules were simple: each side would take turns selecting a drink for the other to consume. The first participant to either collapse or admit defeat would lose. The first round began with a Zarkonian brew called Crimson Venom, its blood-red liquid hissing softly as if alive, drawing gasps from the crowd as faint ripples of light danced on the table. Its blood-red color and faintly hissing surface made it look more like a weapon than a beverage. Zetal pushed the glass toward Rachel with a smug grin. "A Zarkonian classic," he said. "Let us see how your human physiology handles it." Rachel lifted the glass, inspecting the liquid as if appraising a fine wine. "Cheers," she said, knocking it back in one smooth motion. The burn was immediate and intense, spreading through her veins like wildfire. Her vision swam for a moment, but she clenched her fists and steadied herself, refusing to show any weakness. "Not bad," she said, her voice slightly hoarse but steady. "Your turn." Mac slid a glass of Earth's infamous dragon's breath toward Zetal. The thick, amber liquid was known for its fiery kick and ability to leave even the hardiest drinkers gasping for air. Zetal's golden eyes narrowed as he raised the glass to his snout. With a quick, decisive motion, he drank it all. For a moment, Zetal seemed unaffected. Then his scales flushed a deeper shade of bronze, and he exhaled a plume of faint smoke. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers as Zetal's claws gripped the table, his composure faltering for just a moment. "Impressive," Rachel said, leaning forward. "Didn't think you had it in you." "We Zarkonians are made of sterner stuff than you imagine," Zetal replied, though his voice carried a hint of strain. As the rounds progressed, the drinks became increasingly bizarre and dangerous. One concoction, named Nebula Frost, sent shivers through Rachel's body as though her very bones were freezing. Another, called Lunar Blaze, made Zetal's scales briefly flicker with bioluminescent patterns. Each drink pushed the competitors closer to their limits, and the tension in the room was palpable. By the sixth round, Rachel's breaths grew uneven, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the table, while Zetal's tail lay motionless, his golden eyes losing their sharp focus. Rachel's movements were slower, her usually sharp eyes slightly glazed. Zetal's posture had slumped, and his breaths came in shallow gasps. But neither was willing to back down. "What do you think, Commander?" Rachel said, her words slightly slurred. "Ready to call it quits?" Zetal's tail twitched, and he bared his teeth in a grimace that was equal parts defiance and exhaustion. "Never," he rasped. Mac leaned over to Rachel, whispering, "You've got this, Razor. Just one more round." Rachel nodded, her jaw set with determination. She reached for the next drink, a viscous green liquid known only as Eclipse Poison. The bartender's expression turned grave as he slid the glass toward her. "Careful with this one," he warned. "Even a sip is enough to down most species." Rachel smirked, lifting the glass. "Most species aren't human," she said before taking a cautious sip. The liquid burned like acid, and for a moment, she thought her heart might stop. But she forced herself to swallow, her fingers gripping the table as she fought to stay upright. The crowd erupted into raucous cheers, some pounding on tables while others whooped in sync with the rhythmic stomping of boots, their chants of human Human, shaking the walls. Zetal glared at the drink, his pride warring with his survival instincts. Finally, with a growl, he lifted the glass and downed it in one go. The room held its collective breath as Zetal's body shuddered. His claws dug into the table, and his golden eyes fluttered closed for a moment. When they reopened, he looked directly at Rachel. "You are formidable," he admitted, his voice barely audible. Then, with a final shudder, he collapsed onto the table, unconscious. Rachel slumped back in her chair, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The room erupted into thunderous applause, and Mac clapped her on the back. "You did it, Razor," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "You just drank a Zarkonian under the table." Rachel managed a weak smile. "Told you, humans are the best." As the celebration continued, Zetal's crew grudgingly handed over a data chip containing the supply depot coordinates. Rachel pocketed it with a sense of satisfaction. The victory had been hard-won, but it was worth every moment. Humanity's resilience was now etched into the annals of interstellar lore, a triumph that celebrated Rachel's cunning and determination, destined to be retold in cantinas across the stars. The coordinates obtained from the Zarkonian data chip led to a barren, uncharted moon orbiting a dying star. The surface was a desolate expanse of ash and jagged rock, its eerie stillness punctuated by the crackle of lightning and the faint, acrid smell of ozone carried on the dry wind. In the distance, jagged peaks loomed like the skeletal remains of some long-dead beast. Rachel stood at the edge of a crumbling ravine, her team assembled behind her, their expressions a mix of awe and apprehension. "This place gives me the creeps," Mac muttered, his voice low but carrying easily in the silence. "You sure this is the right spot, Razor?" Rachel pulled out a holoscanner, the device emitting a soft hum as it projected a glowing, three-dimensional map, its intricate lines flickering like veins of light beneath their feet. The team exchanged tense glances, the weight of what lay below pressing heavily on their shoulders. "This is it," she confirmed. Zetal wasn't lying. "There's a Zarkonian supply depot down there, and it's massive." "Massive means heavily guarded," Private Lynn said, her hand resting on the hilt of her plasma rifle. "What's the plan, Sergeant?" Rachel studied the map, her brow furrowing as she considered their options. The depot's entrance was sealed with reinforced plating, and its layout suggested a labyrinth of corridors designed to disorient intruders. The facility's power signature hinted at advanced security measures, including automated turrets and possibly sentient defenses. "We're not walking into a trap," Rachel said finally. "We'll take a stealth approach. In and out before they even know we're here. Mac, you'll handle the hacking. Lynn, cover the rear. The rest of you, follow my lead." The team nodded, their confidence bolstered by Rachel's calm determination. They descended into the ravine, their movements careful and deliberate. The entrance to the depot loomed ahead, a massive metal door embedded in the rock face. Mac set to work, his fingers flying over the console as he bypassed the security protocols. Moments later, the door hissed open, revealing a dark corridor lit by faint, flickering lights. "Stay sharp," Rachel whispered, leading the way inside. The air was cold and stale, laced with the metallic tang of machinery and the faint whirring of unseen mechanisms echoing through the corridors. A sense of unease crept over the team, each sound amplifying the oppressive silence. The walls were lined with pipes and conduits, their surfaces corroded from years of neglect. The team moved in formation, their footsteps muffled by the thick dust coating the floor. It wasn't long before they encountered their first obstacle. A sentry drone hovered ahead, its spherical body bristling with sensors and weaponry. Rachel signaled for the team to halt, her mind racing as she calculated their next move. "EMP grenade," she said quietly, nodding to Lynn. The private pulled a small device from her belt, primed it, and tossed it down the corridor. The grenade detonated with a soft pop, releasing a wave of energy that sent the drone spiraling to the ground, its systems fried. "Nice work," Rachel said. Motioning for the team to continue. They pressed on, encountering and neutralizing similar defenses with practiced efficiency. But as they delved deeper into the facility, the resistance grew stronger. Automated turrets emerged from concealed panels, forcing the team to take cover as they returned fire. The sound of plasma bolts echoed through the corridors, the intense heat leaving scorch marks on the walls. By the time they reached the central chamber, the team bore the marks of their struggle: scuffed armor, singed clothing, and beads of sweat streaking through the dust on their faces. Despite their battered appearance, they moved with a grim determination, their unspoken bond driving them forward. The chamber was a cavernous space filled with rows of storage units, each one glowing faintly with an eerie green light. At the center of the room stood a towering Zarkonian commander, his armor glinting under the harsh overhead lights. Flanking him were two sentient defense units, their mechanical forms sleek and menacing. "Humans," the commander snarled, his voice a low rumble. "Your audacity knows no bounds. To trespass on Zarkonian territory is to invite annihilation." Rachel stepped forward, her expression steely. "We're not here to start a war. But we will defend ourselves if necessary. Stand down, and we'll leave with what we came for." The commander laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can dictate terms? Foolish creatures. You will learn the price of defiance." With a wave of his clawed hand, the defense units sprang into action, their weapons charging with an ominous hum. Rachel and her team scattered, taking cover behind the storage units as the chamber erupted into chaos. The Zarkonian commander joined the fray, his strength and agility belying his massive size. He moved with precision, his strikes calculated to exploit any weakness. Rachel's focus sharpened as she engaged one of the defense units. Its movements were fluid and almost graceful, its attacks swift and relentless. She dodged a plasma bolt, her own weapon retaliating with a burst of energy that struck the unit's torso. Sparks flew as the shot connected, but the machine remained operational, its glowing eyes fixed on her. "Mac, we need a distraction," Rachel shouted, her voice barely audible over the din. "On it," Mac replied, pulling a device from his pack. He activated it, releasing a swarm of holographic decoys that darted around the chamber. The defense units hesitated, their sensors momentarily overwhelmed. Rachel seized the opportunity, launching a well-aimed shot that disabled her opponent. Meanwhile, Lynn faced off against the second defense unit, her plasma rifle blazing as she dodged its attacks with remarkable agility. Mac provided cover fire, his shots precise and strategic. The team's coordinated efforts began to turn the tide, but the Zarkonian commander remained a formidable opponent. Rachel squared off against him, their movements a blur, the clash of his claws against her weapon ringing out like sharp, metallic notes in the chaos. She calculated each move with precision, her mind racing to anticipate his next strike. His claws slashed through the air, narrowly missing her as she ducked and retaliated with a series of calculated strikes. Despite his size, the commander was fast, his every move a testament to his training and experience. "You fight well for a human," he said, his voice tinged with grudging respect. "But you will not prevail." "We'll see about that," Rachel replied, her tone unwavering. She feinted to the left, drawing him off balance before delivering a powerful strike to his armored chest. The blow staggered him, and she pressed the advantage, forcing him back toward the chamber's perimeter. With a final surge of effort, Rachel delivered a shot to the commander's leg, causing him to collapse to one knee. The remaining defense unit faltered, its systems damaged beyond repair. The room fell silent, the hum of the storage units mingling with the faint hiss of cooling machinery and the heavy, uneven breaths of the humans. The quiet carried a weight, a shared recognition of what they had endured to stand victorious. "It's over," Rachel said, her weapon trained on the commander. "Stand down." The Zarkonian growled but lowered his weapon, acknowledging his defeat. Rachel signaled for the team to secure the area, their movements efficient despite their exhaustion. They retrieved the supplies they needed, their victory hard-won but decisive. As they exited the facility, Rachel glanced back at the defeated commander. "Next time, think twice before underestimating humans," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. The commander said nothing, his golden eyes burning with a mixture of anger and admiration. The team ascended from the depths of the depot, their spirits buoyed by their triumph. The barren moon's surface seemed less foreboding now, the dying star casting a faint but hopeful light that illuminated the quiet triumph etched in Rachel's expression and the unspoken camaraderie solidifying within her team. The journey back to their ship was marked by the faint crackle of distant lightning and the rhythmic crunch of ash underfoot, each step echoing the team's quiet resolve and lingering adrenaline from their hard-fought victory. The team trudged through the barren landscape, their silence punctuated only by the occasional hum of distant thunder and the crunch of ash underfoot. The moon's surface, bathed in the dim glow of the dying star, seemed to hold a quiet melancholy, its jagged terrain softened by the faint light and the stillness broken only by a whisper of the shifting wind. Rachel walked at the front of the group, her gaze fixed ahead while fragments of the depot confrontation replayed in her mind, the split-second decisions, the precise teamwork, and the unexpected glimmer of respect in Zetor's eyes. "We did good, Razor," Mac said, breaking the silence. He shifted the heavy supply crate on his shoulder and offered a tired grin. "Hell of a fight down there. We made it out in one piece." Rachel glanced back at him, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Barely. But yeah, we did." She let her gaze sweep over her team. They were battered and exhausted, but alive. And more importantly, they were together. As they neared the ship, a low, familiar rumble broke the quiet. The Zarkonian commander, flanked by a small group of his remaining forces, emerged from the shadows of a jagged outcrop. His armor was dented, his posture weary, but his golden eyes burned with an intensity that belied his injuries. "Commander Zetor," Rachel said, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. "Didn't think you'd let us leave so easily." Zetor raised a clawed hand, signaling his forces to hold their position. "You have bested us," he said, his voice steady, though his claws tightened at his sides as if wrestling with a sense of duty and wounded pride. "It is not in our nature to admit defeat, but neither is it in our nature to deny honor where it is due. You fought well, human." Rachel studied him for a moment, then nodded. "So did you." A tense silence followed before Zetor stepped forward, holding out a small, shimmering device. "Take this," he said, his hand hovering for a brief moment before extending the shimmering device. The faint flicker of hesitation in his eyes hinted at the weight of the gesture. "It is a gesture of recognition. Within it are star charts, trade routes, and intelligence that may prove valuable to your kind. Acknowledgement of your resilience." Mac let out a low whistle. "Didn't see that coming," he muttered under his breath. Rachel stepped forward cautiously, taking the device from Zetor's outstretched hand. "Why?" she asked, her voice low. "Why give us this? You didn't have to." Zetor's expression hardened, but there was a flicker of something deeper in his gaze, something almost human. "Because you have shown us that strength is not solely in numbers or weapons, but in will. Perhaps there is more to your species than we understood. Consider this a truce, and a challenge." Rachel inclined her head, her grip firm on the device as she studied Zetor, her thoughts flickering between caution and the possibility of genuine respect in his golden eyes. "We'll make good use of it. And we'll be ready if you come looking for a rematch." Zetor's lips curled into what might have been a smile. "Until then." With that, he turned and led his forces away, disappearing into the jagged terrain. The team boarded their ship, the familiar hum of its systems coming to life as they prepared for departure. Rachel sat in the cockpit, the device resting on the console before her. The weight of their victory and what it meant settled over her. "So, Razor," Mac said, leaning against the doorway. "What's the moral of the story here? Never challenge humans to a drinking contest. Or don't mess with Marines." Rachel chuckled, shaking her head. "It's about respect, Mac. Strength comes in different forms. We proved ours, and they proved theirs. Sometimes, the toughest fights end with something better than victory, mutual understanding." He nodded thoughtfully. "Think they'll actually leave us alone?" "Maybe," Rachel said. "Or maybe they'll come back stronger, smarter. Either way, we'll be ready." As the ship lifted off, Rachel gazed out at the moon's surface, now shrinking beneath them, her thoughts turning to the team's resilience and the delicate balance of trust and challenge they had struck. The challenge had tested them in ways she hadn't anticipated, but it had also revealed something more profound. In a galaxy teeming with conflict, resilience was more than survival. It was the ability to forge understanding, to transform rivals into allies through courage and respect, and to find common ground where only animosity had existed. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and unyielding. And as the ship broke into the quiet expanse of space, Rachel felt a sense of clarity. The mission hadn't just been about supplies or survival. It had been about proving humanity's place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as contenders worthy of recognition. "Set course for the nearest station," Rachel said, her voice steady. "Let's see where this takes us." The team nodded, their camaraderie strengthened by the trials they'd faced together. The ship's engines roared, propelling them toward an uncertain future, a future where humanity's resilience would continue to carve its place in the galaxy, one challenge at a time.